So reading from Srimad Bhagawatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 38. I'll do 38 through 40. We'll do the first shloka together, then I'll read the shlokas, the 39 and 40 myself, and the translations reports. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Yach Chakratanga Matstrotam Yachokatanga Matstrotam Mat Katabayudaya Yankitam Mat Katabayudayam Kitam Yad Va Tapasi Te Nista Yad Va Tapasi Te Nista Sa Esha Mad Anugraha Sa Esha Mad Anugraha Yachakartanga Matstrotram Makataba Yudayam Kitam Yadva Tapasi Te Nista Sa Esha Madanugraha Yachakaratanga Matstrotram Makataba Yudayankitam Yadva Tapasi Te Nishta Sa Esha Mad Anugraha. Others?
Yachakartanga Matstotram Makatabyudayankitam Yadva Tapasi Te Nishta Sa Esha Madanugraha
Yachchakartanga Matstotram Matkatabudayankitam Yadvatapasite Nista Saisha Madanugraha
Yachkatartanga Matstotram Matkatabudayankitam Yadvatapasite Nishta Saisha Madanugraha Yachkatartanga Matstotram Matkatabudayankitam Yadvatapasite Nishta Saisha Madanugraha.
Word for word. Yat, that which Chakarta, performed, Anga, O Brahma, Matstrotram, prayers from me, Matkata, words regarding my activities.
Words regarding my activities.
of the Yudhaya Ankitam,
of Yudhaya Ankitam,
enumerating my transcendental glories,
enumerating my transcendental glories,
yat,
yat,
or that, ba, either, tapasi, and penance, te, your, nishta, faith, sa, that, Asia, all these, mat, my, anugraha, causeless mercy. Translation. O Brahma, the prayers that you have chanted praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penances you have undergone or undertaken to understand me, and your firm faith in me, all these are to be considered my causeless mercy. Please repeat. O Brahma, the prayers you have chanted, praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penance you have undertaken to understand me, and your firm faith in me, all these are to be considered my causeless mercy. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When a living entity desires to serve the Lord and transcendental loving service, the Lord helps the devotee in so many ways as the Chaitya Guru, or the spiritual master within. And thus, the devotee can perform many wonderful activities beyond material estimation. By the mercy of the Lord, even a layman can pose prayers of the highest spiritual perfection. Such perfection is not limited by the material qualifications, but is developed by the dint of one's sincere endeavor to render transcendental service. Voluntary endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. Material acquisition of wealth or education are not considered. Text 39. Prituham masu pradram te lokanam vicharya yat astrasur gunamayam nirgunam manuvranayam. Translation. I am very much pleased by your description of me in terms of my transcendental qualities, which appear mundane to the mundaners. I grant you all benedictions in your desire to glorify all the planets by your activities. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord, like Brahma and those in line with the civic succession, always desire that the Lord be known all over the universe by each and every one of the living entities. The desire of the devotee is always blessed by the Lord. The impersonalist sometimes prays for the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Narayan, in his embodiment of material goodness. But such prayers do not satisfy the Lord because he is not thereby glorified in terms of his actual transcendental qualities. The pure devotees of the Lord are always most dear to him. Although he is always kind and merciful to all living entities, here the word guna mayam is significant because it indicates a Lord possessing transcendental qualities. Text 40. Ya itena umam nityam stupastodrena mam bachet tasya so samprasidayam sarva kama vreshvaraha. Any human being who prays like Brahma and thus worships me shall very soon be blessed with the fulfillment of all desires. For I am the Lord of all benediction. The prayers offered by Brahma cannot be chanted by anyone to desire to fill his own sense gratification. Such prayers can be selected only by a person who wants to satisfy the Lord in his service. The Lord certainly fulfills all desires in regard to transcendental loving service, but he cannot fulfill the whims of non-devotees. Even such casual devotees offer him the best prayers. Om Gyan Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vistam Shaktam Bhutale Svayamukadamayam Dadanti Svadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavancha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sarvagamatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sabdvetam Sabrutam Krishna Season Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahaganalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Sja Hey Krishna Krino Sundar Dino Bando Jagapate Gopisha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Nobste Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radha Manavameshwari Vishvasu Devi Harvanami Hardre Vancha Kalpa Tribascha Kripa Sindhuvivacha Pitana Admido Vaishnava Namanamha. So I'd like to thank all devotees for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class, giving me the opportunity to serve. And so we find here, Lord Brahma is offering prayers to the Lord. Lord Vishnu, in particular, he's offering to the form of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. He gives birth to Lord Brahma. Next man is to Kishoredakshay Vishnu, who's a super soul in the heart. He's a Paramatma. Garbhodakshay Vishnu is coming from Mahavishnu. Brahma didn't know, he didn't understand his origin. So he was he kind of didn't know where he was coming from. He didn't understand his origin. He didn't know who his father was, who his mother was. But the Lord advised him with the word tapa. So he hears this word tapa, meaning austerity. So engaged in particular penance. And this penance, in particular, was to glorify the Lord. He was meditating on his penance. So Brahma realized that the Lord is transcendental. So sometimes the Mayavadis, particular schools of thought, may think, may even glorify Vishnu or Krishna. And they may say that he is, this form is in modes of goodness. So it's, but yet the Brahma Jyoti is considered transcendence. So oftentimes you can see that in impersonalists, they may even worship deities in the temple. But they say the ultimate goal is to go beyond the deity and to understand the formless aspect of the Lord. And so they have this concept kind of backwards. Because even to say that the Lord is in the mode of goodness is kind of like belittling a great personality as Krishna. It's kind of like saying someone that's a governor of a state. You may say, oh, he's a great mayor, he's a wonderful mayor. And a person that doesn't know about politics may think, well, that's a nice compliment. But actually, the governor's thinking, well, you know, mayor, I have a lot more responsibilities than a mayor does, and I do so many other things. So that's kind of, in one sense, not the appropriate title. So in the same way, that the Mayavadis have it wrong in the sense of that, of considering the Lord to be transcendental, because he's beyond these modes of material nature. Because even the modes of goodness are still considered material, even though that they can be, say, described as a springboard for transcendence. If anyone's ever been swimming and diving on a diving board, you jump on the board and it springs you up in the air and you go into the water. So similarly, the mode of goodness can be used as a springboard to dive into the ocean of devotion, right? So as when Prabhupada came, Prabhupada taught devotees everything, right? Even the most basic things of being clean. Even the definition of many Westerns of cleanliness cannot even compare to what Prabhupada gave us just in the material sense of keeping clean. I remember one time I was talking to my aunt, and I made the mistake of trying to explain to her certain things about Krishna consciousness, but I said something like, even when devotees use the bathroom, they will take a shower to be totally clean. And she thought, wow, that's pretty fanatical. But she didn't really understand. So to a certain degree, Prabhupada had to teach us everything, even from material platform, how to keep clean. And what to speak of spiritual activities. So this is the idea that one must understand the proper way to worship the Lord. That even for some personalities, they may come close by worshiping, trying to understand, like those that don't have understanding of Vedic principles or Vedic understanding, but on their own through maybe yogic meditation or through deep meditation in different traditions, have come to an understanding of the Supreme Person of Godhead. And so we understand that even within the impersonalists, there are two classes, where we find that there's basically two classes. There's those that are in knowledge of Vedas and those that just don't know. So there's the impersonalists that may say that God is in everything, and I'm in God and you're in God. And so a lot of those people, they come to a particular understanding of God and everything that they see, but they just don't have proper knowledge. And when they're given the proper knowledge, they come to Krishna consciousness. So we see this many times. We'll meet different people in Harinam or book distribution, and then as soon as they get the book, they really kind of take the Krishna consciousness because there's just something they were looking for. They just didn't have the proper knowledge. And so that's why it's so important for us to go on this Harinam Sankirtan. Harinam Sankirtan is very important because it benefits us. It is very pleasing to the Lord. And herein, this is the greatest glorification. Jai. Shri Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai. So we understand this can be the best, one of the best glorifications is the Harinam Sankirtan. It's not only are we glorifying the names of the Lord, but we're glorifying the names of the Lord in the public for others to hear, so that they can actually make spiritual advancement. Even when he hears the holy name, he makes an advancement right away. And it benefits that living entity. And it gives that person the opportunity to come to Krishna. So similarly, in the same way that we can offer prayers to the Lord in the temple, and this is a very important thing, and this actually develops our attachment for Krishna. And it actually gives us the purification to see Krishna as he is. We can't understand Krishna, or we may not necessarily have an attachment to Krishna due to the anarthas within the heart. That we have these different attachments within the heart, so it's hard for us to see Krishna as he is. So a person that maybe has never come to the temple and they come see the deity form, at first they're kind of, for some people, not all, but some maybe are put back, they're thinking that, what are these, sometimes it's interesting too, I've met people from India that they'll say, you have idols. You have idols in your temple. And they call them idols, and it's a very unusual word to hear that, to the idols. Oftentimes we hear it within the Western conception, within America at least, idols like they talk about in the Bible about worshiping false idols. So it has kind of negative connotations to it. So oftentimes I hear them say idols. And so for a lot of people, maybe even for Westerners, that come and they see the deities, and they're maybe put back, unless they're really kind of in the mode of goodness. I know myself, when I first started coming to the temple, that was kind of a difficult thing for me to understand this deity worship. But then, after a period of time of really understanding it and reading the philosophy, it made perfect sense. That the Lord comes in the form of the deity, so the devotee can develop a relationship with the Lord. And the Lord is so kind, he comes in deity form. He gives us unlimited opportunities to serve the deity. And so, what's so wonderful about Krishna consciousness is that the relationship it's so much emphasized within Bhakti Yoga is that the relationship of the living entity having a personal relationship with the Lord in his personal form. And oftentimes the Mayavadis, or the modern day impersonalists, what you may run into in different yogic circles, they often say that because if God has form, then he's limited, right? Because they're thinking in the sense of in a mundane sense. As Prabhupada describes her as mundaners thinking in this way. They think that because form suggests limitation, but they always kind of relate it to themselves. Whereas the Lord is actually unlimited, even though he has form, but he has a spiritual body, not a material body. We understand that the material body is limited in so many particular types of ways. And so often, naturally, we try to relate ourselves to God, unfortunately. But we understand that Krishna is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. He's eternity, knowledge, and bliss. That the more we come in contact with Krishna by serving his deity form, by chanting the holy names, by going in Harinam, by giving Krishna to others, we actually experience this bliss, this Ananda. By engaging in this particular service, it's unlimited in any particular type of way. It's just a matter of engaging oneself in the practice of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, Chandi. Good to see you. Thank you. So, herein that we understand that Brahma was in this, he has the right frame of mind, that he's giving the Lord proper glorification, that Krishna, that within these prayers, Brahma gives many types of prayers, and then often from time to time, particularly for the living entities, we actually get the opportunity to hear from great devotees like Lord Brahma, and then we hear of the pastimes of even in Krishna book, where Brahma thinks that he knows more than the Lord. He actually, Krishna puts him in this type of yoga maya, just to have these particular pastimes for the devotees to understand. So we understand the pastimes where Lord Brahma kidnaps the cowherd boys, and then later on, can't understand why the cowherd boys are still there, even though he kidnapped them. He becomes confused, and then he meditates on it for some time, and then he actually understands that he was so foolish and is trying to play a trick on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That Krishna is the ultimate trickster, and if one tries to trick Krishna, one will be tricked 10 times over. I remember particularly myself when I first started coming to the temple in Gainesville, Florida. I was coming to the lunch program at first. It's a little embarrassing, but I have to kind of mention it. But when I started coming to lunch at that time, they would serve maybe 100, 200, 400 people a day there at that time. Now they serve, I don't know now, but before COVID, they were serving anywhere from 1,000 to 1,100 people a day, 5 days a week. But I think at that time it was maybe 400 or 500 people. But at that time it was also based on kind of a donation, just give whatever you want. And so they had this little donation container that said donations, give whatever, and so people would put money in there. And sometimes I wouldn't have money. Because there's change on the bottom, I would hit it. Like cup my hand and hit the bottom, and so the change would pop back up, so it sounded like I was putting money in it. So I thought by going through there that I could get a free lunch. And so I did that many times, but then I started coming to the temple, and then I started doing service at the temple, and then I ended up staying in Gainesville for about 5 years and just doing service there. So I was thinking, well, Krishna got a much better deal than I got because I ended up doing more service, but ultimately it was to my eternal benefit that happened. So we find in many particular situations that if we try to be more intelligent than the spiritual master, or we try to be more intelligent than God, then actually we'll be tricked in the long run. That if we simply surrender into the instructions of the spiritual master and we surrender to Krishna, then all success is there. But it implies that one must be humble. One must be humble in all his activities. That we understand by reading Shikshashtakam, we should understand the third verse, Trinadapi Snichinato Vahesisnina, Manina Manidina Kichinia Sadahari. That these verses are necessarily meant just to be memorized. They're not just meant to know them, but they're actually to sincerely understand them, to live them. That the scriptures in Srimad Bhagawatam is a scripture that's meant to be lived. It's not meant to be, in one sense, to be intellectualized, but in another sense to be sincerely felt within one's heart. One should be the living Bhagavatam, and by living Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that Lord Brahma shows what it really means. Lord Brahma, even though he's the progenitor within the universe, one of the greatest human living beings, that he has so much power and so much ability that he humbles himself before the Lord. That through his humility, he develops these prayers, and wonderful prayers to please the Lord. And some in the same way, If we try to please the Lord through our prayers and through our sincerity, this is the most important point. That within that the first text, it's talking about there is no qualification that one's needed. That the real qualification is one's simple desire. So we understand that this Krishna consciousness is open to everyone and anyone, but simply we just have to have the desire. And so we sometimes may wonder, well, why don't we have desire? Because we're bound by the material energy. That the material energy is putting so many obstacles in front of us in so many ways. But if we constantly read scripture, and we are constantly chanting and associating with devotees, and particularly associating with senior devotees, and to ask what course of action should one take. Because we can understand through the independent mind can trick us in many particular ways. And sometimes things can be very, very to the point, but sometimes Maya works in very subtle ways. So in order to understand our spiritual position, that's good to actually talk to authorities, and whether it may be the spiritual master or whether it be other senior devotees, that can direct us in the right course of action to take. And so we should always develop this idea of humility. That as a conditioned soul, I'm prone to making mistakes, to be an illusion, that I have imperfect senses, and that my perceptions about the world may not be as clear as someone that is very realized in Krishna consciousness. Oftentimes, this idea of perceiving certain things, that we all think sometimes we see certain things in the same way. And then we can understand particular subject matters when we read Srimad Bhagawatam in certain ways. But according to our conditioning, we may perceive things in different ways. Similarly, like you could give the example of a very simple, basic example of eating meat, right? To some people, if you suggest that they should go vegetarian, they would think, what are you, crazy? It's like, it gives you lots of protein, it makes you strong, and animals are meant for us. And because they're in a particular type of mode, and through their perception, that particular type of mode, they perceive things based on that particular mode. And so they can't see things as they are. So similarly, in the same way, oftentimes we can give this highest knowledge to others that one should surrender to the Supreme Lord. And they say, well, why would I want to surrender to that person? I'm the greatest personality. I'm all that they're surveying. Why should I hold myself to something in a belief system? So we can understand that through some certain perceptions, people cannot see things as they are. So for us, it's of vital importance that we continually humble ourselves and through the purity. As it said, that purity is the force. That we purify our hearts and our minds, the process of the sadhana bhakti process, then we can actually see things as they are. And we can perceive things in the proper light. And that sometimes you may think, my perception of things are the same for everyone else. But we can understand someone can read, experience certain things, and have a totally different understanding of it. So it's vitally important that we constantly purify ourselves by hearing Srimad Bhagawatam and engaging in this sadhana bhakti process. And through this process, we can understand things as they are, and being able to take proper instruction through senior devotees. And what we're so fortunate, particularly now in Krishna consciousness, is that there's so many devotees that had to go through, in the early days, had to go through so many hardships of spreading Krishna consciousness in so many difficulties in so many particular type of ways. And if we understand it to a certain extent, that historically, in one sense, this had never been done. Obviously throughout India, Krishna consciousness and Gaudiya Vaishnava was spread, but before Srila Prabhupada, it really wasn't spread that much. I think there were some disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta that went to Germany and England, things like that, but it never really took hold. Bhaktivinoda was able to get some books into different parts of Europe, but it never really spread how Srila Prabhupada spread it. So in that course, understanding who the types of people Srila Prabhupada had to deal with. He had to deal with a lot of people from the countercultural movement, the hippie movement, many people who've been addicted to drugs and so many types of abominable things. And he made, as he says, he made these hippies happies. He made them devotees. But it sounds very simple, but that's actually a great accomplishment and a lot of hard work. And a lot of these devotees that help spread Krishna consciousness were kind of doing it, not really knowing what to really do, but they knew that it was pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. So they did these amazing things at very young ages in spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. And if you even think about it, even people were taking sannyas in their mid-20s and early 20s. I think it was like Jatapataka Maharaj took sannyasi at like, he was 21 or 22 at the time. Ridananda Maharaj was 22. And it's interesting because I went to Ridananda Maharaj's, when he took his 20th anniversary of sannyas. And he kind of says that if I, at the time of taking sannyas, if I knew what it involved, I probably wouldn't have done it. So, because it's such a huge responsibility. So we can understand that through this spreading of Krishna consciousness, something that never had been done before, amazing things happened. And now, in current day Iskcon, we're very fortunate because we have somebody who has experienced all the difficulties and the pitfalls and the challenges, and we can actually ask them for guidance on what to do and what not to do, because they've experienced the goods and the bads and the ups and downs. So we're very fortunate. So we should take great opportunity and advantage of getting this guidance in how to properly engage in Krishna consciousness. So if there's any questions or comments?
Okay. So, is there scriptures that say that the Shudras and the Kshatriyas, they can eat meat or not? Somewhere said in the scriptures like that?
Well, it's described in the Vedas that in particular cases, Kshatriyas, because they, at least in Vedic times, they would hunt and they would kill animals. They had to practice their particular trade at that time. So as far as so with that, I think there were particular animals that could be eaten, but definitely that did exist. But that's in special cases, but particularly now, Prabhupada describes that in this age, everyone's basically a Sudra. But the idea is we're trying to come up to the Brahminical platform. That one may not necessarily be a Brahmin, but at least we're coming to the Brahminical platform and establish these four regular principles to bring someone to the mode of goodness of transcendence, of understanding Krishna consciousness. So, there are particular cases in the Vedas where Kshatriyas were allowed to hunt in this realm, but particularly now it's not suggested at all, and Prabhupada established that.
So there is six types of people that receive sinful actions when they eat meat.
Yeah.
And then when the tiger eat meat, or the cat eat meat, or the dog eat meat, they don't receive sinful actions because this is their food, right?
Yeah.
So when the Shudra eat meat, he receives sinful action.
Yeah, it's understood that animals, they're outside of the laws of karma because they have no free will or free choice. So if you have no free will or free choice, you don't really incur karma in that way. And so they're kind of working out the karma that they have. And then as far as someone engaging in eating meat, according to Vedic understanding, or what Srila Prabhupada says, that when one engages in meat eating, whatever one may belong to, is that he incurs karma. It's a sinful activity. Even if someone is unaware of the things that they're doing, they still get sinful reactions, right? So because the idea is that the living entity has to be responsible for his activities, even if he's not in knowledge of that, because he's put himself in a particular ignorance in one sense. So ultimately, yes, people, according to what Prabhupada has given us and said, that people engage in eating, it's a sinful activity, because also we understand that the Four Principles also establish certain principles or ideas that by eating meat, it destroys the mercy. We destroy mercy in the living entity. So Yes, it's definitely seems like giving. Do you have any of the other thoughts on that, Marge? Okay. How do you do? Sounds good. No? Okay. Okay. Yes.
I liked your point about the governor and the mayor, just this idea that the Lord is in the mode of goodness is a criticism of the Lord. And we have a nice phrase in English, damned with faint praise.
Mm-hmm.
And so that came to mind, seeing, oh, the Lord is nigh and mode of goodness, damned with faint praise. It's praise, but it's...
Yeah. It's just like an minimal type of, I guess, it's a very minimal describing a great personality. It's like, going up to like a movie star and saying, oh yeah.
Hey, you're a good actor.
Yeah. You're not bad. You're pretty good. Oh yeah, I like your stuff. And there's like a great, great actor, or like, oh okay, yeah, sure. Or anybody like going to like huge like a businessman and say something like, well, I like the kind of work that you do, and it's like they don't understand the full gamut of it. So people may be thinking, the Mayabhais in particular, or people that are kind of innocent, that come to impersonalism, and they may read certain things and think, oh look, they're glorifying God and saying that He's Sattva Bhuvan, but they understand that the Lord is beyond the gunas. So he's Sudasattva, is transcendental goodness. So that's a very particular understanding. And also, even for us, the goal isn't to attain Sattva Bhuvan, right? Those are just like I was saying, it's a springboard to transcendence. So I always like the analogy that I heard one time. It's kind of like you go to an airport, right? And you go to the airport, and it's a beautiful airport. Very nicely designed, great air conditioning, nice shops to go to, great place to hang out. And the thing is, you like it so much, and it's so wonderful that you just stay at the airport. And you don't like take your flight out. Well, you miss the whole point of being at the airport. The whole point of the airport is to leave and go somewhere else, not to stay at the airport. So similar in the same way, you may say, well, I like being a vegetarian and listening to nice music and being very intelligent and thoughtful and having nice discussions and all these things. But if I become overwhelmed by being kind of proud of that position, then I become a first-class fool, because I miss the whole reason of what Sattva Guna is for. Is sort of develop higher qualities to transcend. It's a stepping stone. It's not the goal. So sometimes that can be misunderstood. And even people indirectly, they may say things like, well, I'm so wonderful because I'm a vegetarian, or I'm so intelligent because I know the Vedas quite well and I can speak Sanskrit and I can do so much things that you can't. And I'm so much better than you. And so therefore, they just kind of keep themselves in this material world, bound with material energy. So similarly, we should always try to develop these qualities of goodness, of developing knowledge. We should work to aspire to those things, but understand that it's all of it is actually offering to Krishna, to please Krishna. That's the real motivation, that we do these things ultimately to please Krishna. We try to learn the scriptures, we try to give classes, we try to do things to purify our existence, to please God, and help the living entities go back to Godhead. Okay? Srimad Bhagawatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.